The most dangerous person is the one who listens, thinks, and observes. These aren't the words of some modern self-help guru. They come from Bruce Lee, a man who understood that true strength often hides behind a quiet exterior. But here's what Lee didn't tell you. The most dangerous person to yourself might be the one staring back at you in the mirror, wearing the mask of perpetual niceness. Picture this. You wake up every morning and the first thing you do is put on this mask. Before you even brush your teeth, you're already rehearsing how you'll accommodate everyone else's needs today. You smile when you want to scream. You say yes when every fiber of your being screams no. You apologize for taking up space, for having needs, for existing with the audacity of having your own thoughts and desires. And society applauds you for it. What a nice person, they say. So considerate, so selfless, so harmless. That last word should chill you to the bone. Harmless. Not respected, not admired, not even loved. Harmless. Like a neutered dog. That everyone pats on the head but no one takes seriously. But here's the brutal truth they won't tell you. Your niceness isn't virtue. It's a prison you've built with your own hands, and you're both the warden and the prisoner. Every "it's okay" when it's not okay. Every forced smile when you're dying inside. Every time you bite your tongue when you should speak up. These are the bars you're welding to your own cage. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who peered into the darkest corners of the human psyche, had a term for what you're experiencing. The persona. It's the mask we wear to navigate social situations, the character we play to be accepted. But Jung warned us, when you can no longer take off the mask, when the persona becomes your entire identity, you're not living authentically. You're performing a one-man show where you're the star, the audience, and the critic, all at once. Think about the last time you had a genuine, unfiltered thought about someone or something. When was the last time you expressed real anger, real disappointment, real disagreement? If you're struggling to remember, that's not because you're enlightened. It's because you've been slowly erasing yourself, one nice interaction at a time. Every time you swallow your anger to keep the peace, you're not being noble. You're teaching others that your feelings don't matter. Every time you prioritize everyone else's comfort over your own truth, you're not being kind. You're being cowardly. And deep down, in the quiet moments when you're alone with your thoughts, you know this. You feel the rage building, the resentment growing, the slow erosion of your own soul. The nice guy believes he's taking the moral high ground, but he's actually digging his own grave. He thinks he's building bridges, but he's constructing walls. Walls that keep authentic connection at bay. Walls that separate him from his own power. Walls that trap him in a cycle of people-pleasing that leaves everyone, including himself, ultimately unsatisfied. Here's what no one tells you about chronic niceness. It's not about being good to others. It's about being safe. It's about avoiding the terrifying possibility of rejection, conflict, or having to stand alone in your truth. But safety, when taken to extremes, becomes its own kind of death. Let's talk about what's really happening when you choose niceness over authenticity. You're not just being polite. You're engaging in a form of psychological self-harm that would make a masochist blush. Jung identified something he called the shadow. All the parts of ourselves we deem unacceptable and push into the unconscious. Your anger, your selfishness, your desire to be respected and even feared, these aren't character flaws to be eliminated. They're essential parts of your humanity that you've exiled to the basement of your psyche. But here's the thing about shadows. The more you ignore them, the larger they grow. The more you deny them, the more they control you from the darkness. Imagine your psyche as a house. The nice guy spends all his time in the living room, keeping it spotlessly clean for visitors, while the basement fills with all the emotions and impulses he's too ashamed to acknowledge. But basements have a way of flooding up into the main floors when the pressure becomes too much. When you suppress your authentic reactions in favor of socially acceptable ones, you're not eliminating negative emotions, you're compressing them. And compressed emotions don't disappear, they explode. This is why the nicest people often have the most spectacular breakdowns. Why the most accommodating individuals suddenly snap and say things that shock everyone around them. It's not a character flaw, it's physics. What goes down must eventually come up. Consider this uncomfortable truth. Every time you say it's fine when it's clearly not fine, you're lying. Every time you agree to something you don't want to do to avoid conflict, you're being dishonest. Every time you pretend to be happy when you're miserable, you're committing fraud against others, but more importantly, against yourself. You've become a con artist whose mark is your own soul. The psychology behind chronic niceness often stems from childhood conditioning. Maybe you learned that love was conditional on your behavior. Maybe you discovered that being agreeable kept you safe from criticism or abandonment. Maybe you internalized the message that your needs were secondary to everyone else's comfort. These survival strategies served you once, but now they're killing you slowly, like taking medicine for a disease you no longer have. You've become addicted to external validation, dependent on others' approval for your sense of self-worth. But here's the cruel irony. The more desperately you seek approval through niceness, the less respect you actually receive. People can sense inauthenticity from miles away. They might not be able to articulate it, but they feel it. Your niceness starts to feel manipulative, desperate, even repulsive. Robert Glover, in his groundbreaking work on nice guy syndrome, identified this pattern. Nice guys give to get. They're not actually selfless. They're engaged in covert contracts. If I'm nice to you, you owe me something in return. But these contracts are never explicitly stated, so they're constantly being violated, leading to resentment, frustration, and a deep sense of being misunderstood. Think about your last relationship conflict. Were you genuinely confused about why the other person was upset with you? Did you think to yourself, "But I'm so nice to them, why are they treating me this way?" That confusion is the sound of a covert contract being broken. You thought your niceness was currency, but the other person never agreed to that exchange. Right, the most insidious part of this dynamic is that you probably don't even recognize your own anger and resentment. You've become so skilled at suppressing these feelings that they've gone underground, manifesting as passive aggression, chronic fatigue, depression, or sudden emotional outbursts that seem to come from nowhere. Your body keeps the score even when your mind refuses to acknowledge the game being played. Let's examine the true price you pay for your niceness. It's not just about missed opportunities or suppressed feelings. It's about the systematic destruction of your capacity for genuine intimacy and self-respect. You're not just losing individual battles. You're losing the war for your own soul. When you're always nice, you become predictable. And predictable people, while comfortable, are rarely exciting, rarely magnetic, rarely memorable. You become the human equivalent of beige wallpaper, pleasant enough, inoffensive, but ultimately forgettable. Your relationships become shallow because you never risk showing who you really are beneath the mask. Think about the people you most admire and respect. Are they the ones who never disagree with anyone? Are they the ones who never express strong opinions? Are they the ones who bend themselves into pretzels to accommodate everyone else's preferences? Of course not. The people we respect are those who have boundaries, who stand for something, who are willing to risk disapproval in service of their values. They're the ones who say no when they mean no, who express genuine emotions, who occasionally make others uncomfortable with their authenticity. Your chronic niceness is actually a form of emotional manipulation, though you probably don't recognize it as such. You're trying to control others' perceptions of you, trying to guarantee positive responses, trying to avoid the natural friction that comes with authentic human interaction. But relationships without friction are relationships without depth. Conflict, when handled maturely, creates intimacy. Disagreement, when expressed respectfully, creates understanding. Tension can be the birthplace of breakthrough. By avoiding all potential conflict, you're not creating harmony, you're creating distance. People might like the nice version of you, but they don't know the real you. And if they don't know the Real you? They can't actually love the real you. What they love is your performance, and deep down, you know the difference. You're starving for genuine connection while serving up a steady diet of pleasant lies. This creates a devastating psychological double bind. You desperately want to be loved and accepted, so you present a false self that you think will be more lovable. But the acceptance you receive is for this false self, not your authentic self. So you never actually get what you were seeking in the first place: genuine love and acceptance for who you truly are. You're like an actor who becomes so famous for playing a character that nobody remembers the person beneath the costume. The nice guy lives in constant fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being seen as selfish or difficult. But this fear-based living prevents you from experiencing the joy and freedom that come with authentic self-expression. You're so busy managing everyone else's emotions that you've forgotten how to feel your own. You've become an emotional air traffic controller, constantly monitoring and adjusting to keep everyone comfortable, while your own plane crashes in. The background: consider the relationships in your life right now. How many people truly know what makes you angry? How many have seen you vulnerable but not performing vulnerability? How many know what you actually want, not what you think you should want? If these numbers are low, you're not living. You're curating a museum exhibit of yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does." The chronic people pleaser is the opposite of this wisdom, constantly monitoring others' reactions, constantly adjusting behavior based on external feedback, constantly living as a slave to others' opinions. You've made yourself a prisoner to every stranger's potential judgment. But perhaps the cruelest cost of all is what happens to your decision-making ability. When you've spent years prioritizing others' preferences over your own, you literally lose touch with what you actually want. You become like a compass that's been near too many magnets. You can't find true north anymore. Your desires, your preferences, your very sense of self becomes subordinated to an endless calculation of what others might want to hear. Here's what they don't teach you in school, what your parents probably never modeled, what society actively discourages. Real kindness requires strength, not weakness. Authentic niceness comes from a place of choice, not compulsion. When you're powerful enough to be difficult, but choose to be considerate, that's virtue. When you're nice because you're too weak to be anything else, that's just cowardice dressed up as morality. The journey from people-pleaser to authentic person begins with a radical act of self-honesty. You must admit that your niceness hasn't been serving you or anyone else. You must acknowledge that you've been lying to others and to yourself. You must recognize that your fear of being disliked has made you someone who can't be genuinely liked. This admission isn't self-flagellation, it's liberation. It's the moment you stop pretending the prison door is locked when you've been holding the key all along. This doesn't mean becoming an asshole. The world has enough of those already. It means becoming integrated. It means owning your shadow, acknowledging your selfish desires, accepting your capacity for anger and cruelty, and then choosing consciously how to express these aspects of yourself. When you know you could destroy someone with words but choose kindness instead, that kindness has weight. When you could manipulate a situation to your advantage but choose honesty instead, that honesty has power. The difference between a weak person being nice and a strong person being kind is the difference between a candle flame and a controlled burn. One exists because it has no choice. The other exists because someone with the power to create fire chose to use it constructively. Start small, but start somewhere. Say no to something you don't want to do. Express a preference that might inconvenience others. Share an opinion that might be unpopular. Voice a boundary that might create temporary tension. Notice how the world doesn't end. Notice how people's respect for you might actually increase. Notice how your own self-respect begins to return from its long exile. The most magnetic people are those who are unpredictably kind. They have the capacity for various responses, but they choose kindness. The least magnetic people are those who are predictably nice. They only have one setting, and it's not even authentic. It's like the difference between a master chef who could make any dish but chooses to make you something special, versus a vending machine that only dispenses one product. Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, rather than who you think you should be. This requires integrating all aspects of yourself, including the parts you've been taught to suppress. Your anger can become righteous indignation that fights for justice. Your selfishness can become healthy self-care that allows you to give from a place of abundance rather than depletion. Your cruelty can become discernment that protects you and others from harmful situations. The goal isn't to become mean or inconsiderate. The goal is to become real. Real people have bad days. Real people have strong opinions. Real people sometimes prioritize their own needs. Real people occasionally say things they regret. Real people are human, not perfect. And paradoxically, this imperfection makes them more lovable, not less. Here's what authentic power looks like in practice. You speak your truth, knowing it might create discomfort. You set boundaries and maintain them, even when others push back. You express your needs directly instead of hoping others will guess. You allow yourself to feel anger without becoming destructive. You admit when you're wrong without making it a performance of humility. You care what others think, but not so much that it overrides what you think. And here's the beautiful irony. When you stop trying so hard to be liked, you become more likable. When you stop performing niceness, you become genuinely kind. When you stop needing everyone's approval, you become worthy of respect. When you integrate your shadow, you become whole. When you risk being disliked by some, you become capable of being truly loved by others. The choice is yours, and it's being made every moment of every day. You can continue wearing the mask, continue the performance, continue slowly dying inside, while everyone applauds your niceness. Or you can risk being real, risk being disliked by some to be genuinely loved by others, risk temporary discomfort for long-term authenticity. Your soul is waiting for you to choose courage over comfort, truth over approval, authenticity over performance. The question isn't whether you can afford to make this change, it's whether you can afford not to. Every day you delay is another day of living as a stranger to yourself, another day of settling for shallow connections instead of deep love, another day of giving your power away to people who probably aren't even thinking about you. Stop being nice. Start being real. Your life, your real life, not the performance you've been calling a life, depends on it. The world doesn't need another people pleaser. It needs you, the real you, with all your complexity and contradictions and authentic humanity. That person is worth fighting for. That person deserves to exist. That person has been waiting patiently for you to remember who they are. The mask has served its purpose. It kept you safe when you needed safety. But you're not that scared child anymore. You're powerful enough now to handle the consequences of authenticity. You're strong enough to lose some people in order to find yourself. You're brave enough to disappoint others in order to stop disappointing yourself. Take off the mask. Breathe the air of authenticity. Feel what it's like to be real again. Your future self is counting on you to make this choice today.